Hello and welcome back to Bourbon Barrel Talk. I'm your host, Scott Minton. Today we're back in the Brock Bourbon Bar and we're interviewing Alan Kennedy with Redemption Whiskey. Alan, how's it going, sir?
It is going great. Thanks for having me today.
Great to have you here. So, you know, before we get started, what I always like to do is I throw out the real, hard knuckleball questions at you right away, man. So, before you got started with Redemption, tell us a little bit more about yourself. What do you do for fun? You know, what's family life like? We just want to know a little bit about you, so that way if we have to razz you, we know what to razz you about.
Fair enough. So, so I have a very weird journey to where I got. So I started in the culinary world. I'm a pastry chef by training. So I also obviously do savory. If you do one, you do the other. Pastry just being the science side of it. Turns out that really helped me with whiskey later. While I was in culinary school, I just found out that I needed this thing. You guys might have heard of it. It's called money. So I started serving in a restaurant. And that restaurant had an amazing wine list. And I figured out that if I sold wine, I made more money. So I started really getting to that. Got really into wine for a while and actually ended up I'm a level 3 somm.
Nice.
Yeah, so I got into heavy in the wine world for a while. Became a maitre d' in Atlanta and sommed there and worked through that. Found my way that I didn't really like the somm community as much. It just wasn't my calling. Got into the cocktail world. Made the high-level cocktail menus for probably about 37, 38 different menus throughout the country. LA, New York, Chicago, Nashville, where I'm from. Miami, London, a whole bunch of different ones there. I really got to enjoy that. Started working with brands and distributors, creating cocktail menus for them. And through that, created a marketing company where I did brand ambassador programs for things. And I also created brands to help people create their own brands. Through that, I worked with a lot of huge brands, throughout the industry. But I ended up working with a brand called Whistle Pig and met a man named Dave Pickerel.
Oh, Dave's a legend, man. Dave is a legend.
Yeah, Johnny Appleseed of whiskey himself. I was the steward of the South for Whistle Pig.
Oh, nice.
And so I traveled a lot with him and caught another bug, man. I just, long talks and sitting with him in some of his different Johnny Appleseed locations, going through stuff and learning and being able to ask questions and having him as a mentor really created something inside of me that I wanted to do. Ended up going to Lexington Brewing Distilling Company, so on the bourbon side of things, which is Town Branch. Mm-hmm. Started there as their director of innovation and head blender. Was awarded after about a year, master blender there, the youngest that we can find on the Bourbon Trail history, which is always fun. And then about 2 Septembers ago, I read this press release for this thing called Sur Lee, which is in front of you, so I'm sure we're going to talk about that one. And it amazed me. And it was something that Redemption had come out with that just blew my mind. And right after that, the job opportunity came up. And how am I going to say no to this? I mean, it's a brand. Redemption was a brand that I've been watching for years. I've been working with for years in the bar world. I mean, it was always my go-to. And, it's such an amazing opportunity that, it's something I couldn't turn down. As I said, I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I live in Lexington, Kentucky now. After I left Town Branch, I didn't need to move, and I love this state. So I stayed. I've got 2 little girls, 2 cats, 2 dogs. It's a zoo. So.
It sounds like it. So I'm going to piggyback, a couple of things here. For one, you obviously love traffic because you lived in Nashville and Atlanta.
Yeah. With all my heart, I love it. It's my favorite thing.
I figured it had to be. But with all kidding aside, so you said you traveled around with Dave quite a bit, and I know Dave was super instrumental in one of the local distilleries that's near and dear to our heart here at Starlight. Did you happen to come and at any point with him to Starlight and do any of that stuff?
That was not one because it was above the Tennessee mark. So I would go with him to ones that I'm not going to name because I don't know if he never announced that he had a hand in them. But I would go with him to a lot of the other ones and just be able to. There, it was more just watching him work and then asking him a bunch of questions at dinner that night, because not wanting to interrupt or be part of it because it was learning for me. And it wasn't something, I didn't want to interject in somebody else's brand, but it was amazing because, I got to watch, I was there with the development of Old World and Boss Hog. I actually have a bottle of a sample only bottle of Boss Hog 1 in my house somewhere. So like I got to see the development of some amazing things and be there with him and in the creation of Old World, and then a lot of projects with a lot of other people. And it was just always amazing to see. The only one outside of the South that he invited me to come to, which I didn't have the ability to, he did ask me if I wanted to come out and see Blackened, and I didn't have the ability to do it at the time. But that was one of those ones I was like, I kind of just want to see this, But yeah, it was an amazing time, and it was an amazing man to have as a mentor.
So since we're staring at 3 lovely bottles of Redemption Ryes, can you just tell us what it is that drew you to Redemption, the company, what you like about it? Why is it that the ryes are so good with Redemption?
Thank you very much for that. Having started a background really heavily when I got into the American whiskey world, I worked with some bourbons, bourbon only brands, but having that time with Dave, I got to learn a real love for rye whiskey as a whole. I mean, rye itself is the most unique grain there is. It is powerful, but at the same time, it's delicate and floral, and it's got notes that nothing else can compare to, both in baking, but especially in distilling. And if you look at it, this is why the Scots, the Irish, the Japanese, they're all starting to make rye whiskeys now, because everyone's starting to figure out that this is the most unique of the grains. Mm-hmm. Redemption had always been, even before, my company owned it, even when Dave Schmier started this brand, it has always been something. It was part of the forefront of bringing rye back. And that is, the whole point of the whiskey revival and the rye revival with Redemption. Having that, there to work with. I mean, this is a brand that takes the understanding of the pre-Prohibition, rye whiskey before Prohibition. It was the king of them all. The number one brand of American whiskey in the country before Prohibition was a rye whiskey out of Statesville, North Carolina. It has been reborn, which is nice to see. And shock and surprise, that's where Prohibition started, was Statesville, North Carolina. But I mean, it's, having that, being part of that, to, bringing that back to the forefront, and then taking that and what we've done and going through. And we've got in front of us right now, we've got our rye, which is our core of what we do. Then we have our cognac, which leads back to, harkens back to the other things that were drank pre-Prohibition, and then also having the ability to forward look with innovation with Sur Lee. It's something that, this is a company that's just, without a doubt, one of the most amazing, opportunities and amazing companies.
So you used a word that I feel like everybody we've talked to in the last 2 years is used, and it's a word that nobody ever uses anymore, is harkens. Is that just something that's in your regular vernacular, or did you just
probably. It's probably what I forcefully moved smooth out of my vocabulary. It's probably what took over.
You picked that up in Tennessee, didn't you?
Yeah, probably. Harken, and then we've got the hollers. I always talk to my boss is the winemaker for our company, the head winemaker, and he's like, "Hey, I tried to call you." Yeah, I was in the holler.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. Okay, let me explain this to you. This is why I don't have cell phone coverage.
Yeah. So I have a quick question. What is an average day? What does it look like for you?
Always a lot of Excel sheets.
Okay.
There's always a lot of management, but it's great because I have, we have such a portfolio of different things. It can be anywhere from, I'm right now downstairs in my dining room, blending out. We've got another round of our 10-year barrel proof rye coming soon. Mm-hmm. I've got that down there. I've got the 9-year. I've got some older ones we're doing. Some days it's, just working through and training. And I spend a lot of time on the road out, being the cult leader of Redemption and, mm-hmm. And really getting out there with the gospel of rye whiskey and the gospel of American whiskey. And it's never boring. I will say that, but mm-hmm. It's never the same either, which is great.
So there are a lot of different rye mash bills out there, right? You got the Maryland ryes, you got the Pennsylvania ryes. Indiana's kind of famous for their 95.5, and I kind of see that's what you guys use, mm-hmm. From what I can tell. And then obviously your Kentuckys are your lower ryes. Is the 95.5 your preferred, or is that just kind of what you fell into when you came to this, that type of thing? Where are you at on rye mash bills, and is there one that's more near and dear to your heart than another?
I do have an affinity for for the 95.5, it's all of them have beautiful different notes, right? I love the Kentucky ones. There's some great Kentucky styles. You talk about the Empires out of New York. There's some great ones coming out of there, and it's just different styles. What I like about the 95.5 and what I work with Redemption to really highlight is with the 95.5 having that balance. I'm able to bring out more of the unique floral notes, some of the softer notes. These are things that balance out. When a lot of the ryes really started hitting the market 10, 15 years ago, it was just that punch in the face of spice. And you see a lot of people got pushed back because of that. But now, like we're able to make these spirits that are just beautiful. And the part of my toolbox that I like is the 95.5. We have an amazing distillation partner with MGP as one of our partners that we work with. They hand the barrels to me right after they fill them, and we get to age them in multiple states and get multiple different aspects out of them. And it's something that it's one that I really love. We're also not shy about talking about where we get our stuff, so it's not one of those issues for us.
Nice. One question I have is, whenever you start talking about Redemption ryes or Fantastic Rye, what are a couple of the things that you really like to have be pointed out in from a smell or taste standpoint that you think is a fantastic rye?
I always do. I've had a few that didn't do this, and it really confused me. But I always want that spice. I mean, rye is famous for it for a reason. I want balanced spice myself. I always want that balance with the caramel coming through it. You want that caramel and that, vanilla flavor kind of just weaving its way through it. I really love to finish with not only a strong mouthfeel, but at the same time, the delicate notes that rye can have, because I like that juxtaposition of those two. Rye is famous for not being a single note. It has the ability to go through all the different points. It's also something, though, that as a blender, like on our core rye, I use everywhere from 3-year to 7-year, because on the 3-year, I get some of those stronger spice notes. I want some of that younger. We're not afraid to use younger when we want it. It's not the base of what we do, but it is, I have it in my toolbox. But, with the 6-7 years, I get the vanillas and I get things like that. And then the mid ages is where I kind of get some more delicate things. I want that balance. I want to know and feel all the different parts. I don't, anyone can blend a whiskey to score 93 now. We can all do lab tests and you can literally put it together, right? I like to blend something with a soul. Like it means something. I want something that you're going to go give your mother on Mother's Day, or your friend has a bad day, and I want to be that whiskey that you share. I want to be there for that moment with it where you're celebrating. I want to create something that connects with you, and to do that, it has to connect with me. And so having that soul and reason for the whiskey, that's why we're here.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned earlier, early on in your career, you were in the culinary arts world. Myself, I actually was a baker as well and did all kinds of fun stuff in that side. But tell me how you feel like that has helped with being a master blender, or being able to taste bourbon, or being able to pick out those flavors, those baking spices, things like that.
It's funny because, when it comes to describing and talking, bread is the best thing in the world. It's non-liquid whiskey, as we like to call it. But everybody's had the breads. They're gonna be like cornbread, white bread, rye bread, and it immediately starts to get those flavors. But the way it really helped me is, so my favorite thing to bake is pie. Right? Okay. I've never met anyone in the world that's like, I hate pie. Even the people that are like, I don't like pie, it's always followed by, but there's this one, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Right.
Always.
So what's the one? That's the big question.
For everyone, I have way more than one. But
okay.
And then for, on the other side of it, no one's mad eating pie. You can't mad eat pie. So I love pie, and there's one specific one that I love to talk about when it comes to the relationship between the two, and that is Derby pie. And for those that are listening that don't know Derby pie, I'm sure you guys I'm talking to now do. But Derby pie itself is basically a chocolate pecan pie with bourbon in it. And it's an amazing metaphor for what can be done in whiskey, because every aspect of that pie can be slightly modified and change, right? You add a different kind of sugar to the crust. You toast the pecans differently, use a different chocolate, use different sugars for the base of it, use a different bourbon. And it modifies through. And that's kind of the same thing you're doing with whiskeys. You know, I got a little bit here and I've got a little bit here. And if I slightly modify that, I can bring it here. And just like when you're baking a pie, if I'm mixing the base of that pie and I let it spin a little bit longer and I aerate it some more, it's going to change the flavor profile and the texture later. Whiskey's the same thing. I spend a lot of time with aeration when it comes to a whiskey, because, you know, have you ever had those whiskeys that are like, this is 130 proof, but it tastes like it's 90?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's been they've spent the time to aerate it correctly and spend the time filtering it correctly. These are the same things you do with baking and pastry. And so, like, having that base when I started it, getting it when I started learning about the whiskey side, and then learning about, also went to distillation school, and I'm also, the master distiller for us, obviously not of us, but when I did that, it all clicked really fast for me, because like, oh, this, oh, that, like it made sense. The concepts immediately connected with me, and it allows me to also be able to, I know the base of it, so now I know what I can change and modify. And that's how innovation happens. And they're not always good. We always have something and you're like, that was good, but I'm not going to use it. And it's the same thing. And a lot of that base for that came from pastry with me.
So I do have a quick follow-up here. Coming from your kind of pastry background, or kind of a confectionery, do you have a bourbon ball recipe?
I don't, actually. So as weird as this is, so
Nick is very
because
interested.
I'm from
if you do.
Tennessee, bourbon balls aren't a thing in Tennessee. Like, they're just not a big thing.
No.
And when I moved up here, I'm going to give a shout out to another brand, and my handlers can be mad at this, but we're not really in this part of the world, not really competition. The Woodford ones are really good, okay? And I live 20 minutes from Woodford, so they're available for sale. And the Woodford bourbon balls are really tasty. So I do love them. I do not have a recipe yet. So
Okay.
All right. Well, let us know if you do, because I would love to try some, especially mix it in with some redemption.
I will.
All right. I'm going back to pie, because I love pie, all kinds of pie.
Thank you for stealing my
Right?
question, Scott.
Chocolate pie, pecan pie, derby pie, but also baking. One of my favorite things to do, even though I'm a purist on the whiskey and bourbon side, I love to experiment with cooking. Have you ever tried walnuts in your derby pie?
I haven't. Is it good?
Magnificent.
We really is not. I've tried cashew, which is
Yeah, also
Absolutely fantastic.
good, absolutely. But it's
I haven't tried walnut yet.
so yeah, I actually mix my walnuts with my pecans, and it gives it a more depth of flavor. So it's definitely a must do if you ever want to. If you
I
want to,
will. That sounds good.
yeah, absolutely.
There's a little more of that like earthiness, a little
Yeah.
bit more of that bite to it.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah,
I can also see mixing those and then using rye instead of bourbon.
Oh.
Being the wild card of the bunch here, I'm going to go a little off script and ask.
You're gonna stay in pastry though, because this is now the pastry barrel.
We're just going to go on a journey here, confuse
Lord.
the hell out of everybody.
Tangent.
No, what I shut the hell up. I have an appreciation for people with a science-oriented mind, because I like music. I'm into theater and acting and things like that. So I don't have that capacity. I married a veterinarian, and then she's all about science, right? But what's interesting about what you said is, in what I read even on the website, is that you look for the soul of things, and you like being able for people to sample your product and be hit with a memory, and that it's as much as an emotional component to blending as it is a scientific process. So like when you are in the middle of it, like how much of your mind is constantly kind of going back and finding again a balance between that creativity and that passion versus like the science of it.
I mean, this
Because that evolved, like the science, I'm sure has evolved, so much.
Yeah, the science
over
is
the
always
last
evolving, and
decades
the
or
science is
two.
always there as kind of like your foundation, right? Like I know what I can and cannot do and what I need to, but the emotion side of things take over. I mean, a good story for this is as I said, I have two little girls. And two Halloweens ago, we were all trick-or-treating. Halloween's a big thing in my family. We were trick-or-treating, and the youngest one, who is a little over one at this time, it was her first trick-or-treating. She had gotten tired, so she and I stopped to pass out candy. Mom and the older daughter continued to trick-or-treat. And so, she's, it's like 9 o'clock at night, and she's asking for candy, and of course, I'm giving it to her. And I hand her a bag of a candy called Sugar Babies. Remember these?
Sugar babies.
Sugar babies.
Candy-coated caramels.
Yep.
And I watched on her face the amazement and the love and just this amazing new flavor, right? And I watch it and I see her going through these emotions, and I feel, all the emotions I have as a father going through this and seeing her, not only her happiness, but her wonder. And so I went and I pulled probably about 200, 300, 400 samples, barrels, and I went through and I found all the ones that had caramel and vanilla and butterscotch and all those notes. And I created a whiskey that was those notes in that moment in time. And I wanted people to feel not only what she was feeling, but also what I felt as her father and the love of that I created. And I put that in a whiskey. And when reviews came through on this, it was hilarious because people were just fervent with these, just their own memories and their own experiences. They had no idea what I went through, but they felt it, and they felt that love, and they felt that care. That means more than, any of the rest of the stuff on this. I want people to understand, as I said, I want to be there for the experience. All the brands talk about like premiumization of the whiskeys, right? I'm more in the premiumization of the experience. Not one of my whiskeys is better than the other. They're just for different moments in time.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's whiskeys to be shared and to experienced together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what most people miss. Like, we've gotten to the point now, and God forbid, I hope that it eventually goes away, but you can't find certain things anymore because of the fact that people are hoarding it and selling it and doing this and doing that. But, I dare to say that there's probably 250 bottles in this basement, and probably 250 or 240 are open.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to finish every bottle, but I don't ever want to make something that someone doesn't at least try.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to go buy some more bottles because you want to have it and you love it, thank you. But please try it. I do not like collecting for the sake of collecting. I've had bottles that I kept for years that I then opened at my wedding.
Right.
So, yeah, there are some things I've got bottles saved for each of my daughters for when they turn 21.
So
but, it's just that's how it should be.
Exactly.
But,
So
they
we're
will be
talking.
drank.
So we're talking about experiences. Can we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
That would be incredible. It's one of those things.
Barbara just wants to drink. Don't be polite
she
about it,
is
Barbara.
our local rye lover.
I am. So it's like I've got 3 lovely ryes in front of me, and I'm like, oh, can we do this? Can we do
Oh,
this?
you got
Can we
2
do this?
ryes and a bourbon.
Oh, okay.
There's a curveball there for you.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Sur Lee is a bourbon, correct?
No, the Sur Lee's a rye.
Rye.
The cognac.
Cognac.
Is a
Oh, the cognac finishes the bourbon. Okay.
Oh.
bourbon. You've got all my babies. These are
Okay,
You
I
couldn't
wondered.
really ask me to pick between these. It'd be really hard. So the first one that we've got is going to be our core rye.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is the basis of everything that we have. This is where we started.
You're right.
It has developed and changed and grown over the years, just as all whiskey should. It is a living creature. This one is 3 to 7 years, as I mentioned earlier, at 92 proof. It's got it's got that spice in the front. It's got that nutmeg, and it's got all those baking notes. And then you should have the caramel in the middle with the slight hit of vanilla, and it should end with these almost purple flower honeysuckle notes.
Oh, I can't wait.
At the same time, kind of a strong note to it. It's something that, as someone who was in the cocktail world for a long time, I want you to be able to drink this straight or with a beer or in a cocktail, and I wanted to hold up to all of them. So
Okay, yeah. Well, I love the nose. I mean, those rye spices that pop out really, it awakens everything and lets me go, okay, this is where we're going. Let's go for it. And I like
Exactly.
it when it kind of hits me in the nose, and then it's as I'm tasting it, it's all those mellow ones come through, and you're like, oh, hello, the complexity is just incredible.
And at the same time, it's very approachable because,
Yeah.
like, hearkening. See what I did there, Scott?
See, I've got everybody else.
Hearkening back to what you said earlier about, like, some people were initially, like, very standoffish against rye because it's so powerful and punches you in the head. Whereas, like, you're finding with Redemption that balance between having that rye spice and also balancing those minty herbal notes too, which I know can sometimes scare people off as well. So just how easy this is to drink, I think is a great testament, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm picking up a little bit of dark fruit in there too, along with some citrus, which is odd. Typically, I don't get dark fruit and citrus at the same time. So it's almost like...
Just wait till we get to Sur Lee. It's going to get even weirder.
Well,
I can't wait.
We can't wait, but yeah, it's just... So let's talk pairings, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, culinary world, let's tie in. So, like, for something like this, Redemption Rye, like, what kind of a meal would you serve with something like this?
For something like this one, it's going to go well with something with some spice to it on the other type of spice. It's going to help with that a lot. I like this with, Thai. I like this with that kind of world a lot.
Okay.
It just works well with those kind of flavors, adding a little bit into it. I at the same time I love rye whiskeys with desserts, as we talked about earlier, though, because it does have those balancing notes with a lot of that. That's generally a lot of times where I go with this one. A little bit of spice and a little bit of rye whiskey go really well together. Like, a good spicy burrito taco, those type of, the roast, long roasted meats and, a little bit of good melty cheese. It's just, it's there.
Okay.
So this is quite nice because there's many times that we've talked before on our podcast that ryes tend to gravitate either floral or kind of to the baking spice world. This seems like a very interesting meld that I'm getting a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. So
yeah, and the mint is not overly powerful. Sometimes you get some that are just so mint forward that
the mint and the dill can be a little too strong, especially with MGP. And I do know that, like, a lot of the MGP 95.5s, heavy dill. The ones they put out, that is something they proudly push, and it's just not. I'm not a dill pickle guy, so it's just not something I want to push for. But that's my taste. So
I love dill. That being said, Nick and Scott both are not very big on mint.
Fair enough.
This is good. This is like the acceptable. It's not overbearing. It's not overpowering. It kind of slides in a little bit to kind of like touch it a little bit, but then it kind of moves on. So yeah, I really enjoying that.
I like to play around, right? And I don't typically tell people, because a lot of times I'll buy like wood chips and like Ambriana or, oak, things like that. And I mess around with stuff at home. So for somebody that is wanting or looking into getting into like doing their own like blending or master blending type things, playing around and stuff at home with mini barrels or chips or things like that, how would you tell people to get started in that arena to kind of play with flavors with whiskeys in general?
It's a weird world because there's no school for this. I would honestly learn by blending the great overall chapter. Start by learning blending American whiskeys. Don't try to do just ryes or just bourbons. And the reason for that is learning one product, take a few, and then learn to blend a little bit of wheated whiskey, a little bit of, bourbon, a little bit of rye, and create a blended American whiskey that's exactly that's bringing those characters through. And, adding chips to bring notes out, or what, toasts and things like that. Just because of the fact that you have more access to the different parts. You don't, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more expensive to start if you're like, I'm going to blend my own bourbon by going to buy 14 different single barrels from 14 different places. That's where I would start. And then honestly, just hanging out at distilleries if you can. Get to know people. Because a lot of it is just hang around time.
Do you gravitate kind of towards like pot stills or column stills whenever you're choosing?
Both.
Really? Okay.
I've had a lot of experience with both pot, column, and coffee stills which is the old school combination, and I love all of them. They all have aspects that are beautiful. It's funny because at Town Ranch I had 2 4-side stills, so I had a lot of time, a lot of practice on those. But I've had a lot of experience with the MGP and the Canadian whiskeys from Alberta coming out of still, out of the columns. And I had a friend that worked at a company that had coffee stills up in Canada, and I got to do a lot of experience going through the different barrels that coming out of the coffee still. And one is not better than the other. It's just a different tool. They get to create different things. It's how you create a whiskey after the fact. And I would also add what the brewer does beforehand. For whiskey, people forget that the brewers are so important.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Super important.
I think we're all pretty anticipatory to try this cognac finish. What can you tell us about that? What stands out to you with this particular product?
I was told one time that no matter where you go, you should always have a flask of something you want to present to somebody. Cognac is what's in mine. It starts its life as a 5 to 6 year old high rye bourbon, 36% rye content bourbon. Most of that is 6 year. It then spends a year in fresh cognac casks. I know everyone's like, my casks are fresh. I made a deal with the broker, the guys that actually own the barrels in France. So when they get dumped in October, they get sent over. It ages at Castle and Key for 1 year in the holler.
Yep, that's the holler.
And then when we take it out, when we dump it, we actually fill those barrels back up with warm water to actually extract that and then cut with that water. Heavy aeration goes through this process as well. You get that. I don't want the bourbon to go away. I want that sweet corn. I want that rye spice, but I want that apricot. And it's my favorite way of describing this whiskey is like, it feels like melting into a leather couch at 3:00 in the morning.
The stone fruit is so pronounced, man.
So pronounced, but at the same time, you should. It's not just that, There's still
no, it's not.
It's so I love. It's just beautiful to me.
Wow.
Just the peach and the plum. There's a little bit of nectarine.
Yeah.
Man.
But it's creamy too, which is wild.
Yeah.
Like being able to balance that, dude. This is phenomenal.
Well, we do a lot of the water addition gets added so we add the water to the barrel beforehand, so we don't get a lot of those soapy reactions that you get, especially with brandies, and that does actually affect to a point brandy finishes. We actually do that in the barrel beforehand slowly, so that way that reaction is not happening in the whiskey, that we can slow add. So
That's phenomenal. It's so complex.
So when you drink this, what would you pair this with? No pun intended, because there's a little pear on the palate as well.
Are you sure it's not intended? I feel like that was.
It was
I
definitely
feel like you're lying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm calling you out.
definitely intended.
on the opposing side, it goes really well with like blue cheeses, because you have those notes. You've got those stone fruits. You've got those notes that actually that can opposingly balance with it.
Okay.
Which I know sounds odd, but it actually does. It's you have flavors there that combine with them, but at the same time you have an opposing connection. But on the other side, this goes amazing with like barbecue and like barbecue pizza, flatbreads, those type of things. Things with those kind of sweet, savory notes, just classic with it. And then on the sweeter side of things, the stone fruit things, love like tarts with this, and and dark chocolate is really, really good with this.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was more leaning into that barbecue side, like thinking of like,
We made a barbecue sauce with it. And,
really?
Woo!
Nick?
Hi.
I don't toot my horn a lot, 'cause I like to think of myself pretty humble, but I will say that I stick up for my barbecue. I do my own rubs. I make my own barbecue sauce, and I do a maple bourbon barbecue sauce. Nice. And it's a lot of people enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I was, there was at one point I had a recipe for a kind of like a mango chutney and whiskey barbecue sauce. I haven't had a chance to do it recently, but I think this would pair extremely well with it. I think it might be a little pricey of a barbecue sauce, but I think it would go really well with that.
I mean, right now with the price of meat, it's probably just a balanced out price point. I'm just saying, but making meatballs earlier for some friends coming over tomorrow night, I was like, oh wow, this is like $12 a pound almost. Like, Lord.
I know.
Crazy enough, a couple years ago, I went to a party and they were doing a pig roast. I'd never been before, and for whatever reason, this reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Like it's got a little bit of smokiness on the back end, which is really nice, but that fruit is coming forward still the whole way, which is wild because usually fruit disappears for me. So like I think that with like the roasted pig meat, oh my God, like that would be a winning combo.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So before we dive into the Sur Lee, what do you think it is that you might do differently than some of the other people that have the same job or title that you do in the bourbon world?
I mean, it comes down to different life experiences create different creations, right? I don't think it's necessarily that I'm doing something differently. I just have lived a different life. You know, I'm an old punk rock kid from Nashville. You know, like sleeves of tattoos, and I listen to hip hop and punk while I'm blending. This is going to affect me on it. I think my musical choices are probably quite different from a lot of my cohorts in the industry. Just because I know most of them, they always complain about my music when I'm driving. But other than that, it's not. I don't think there's a definable thing other than just life experience.
That's a neat answer because I always talk about how when I'm drinking whiskey, I tie my tasting notes to memories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I'll get leather and I'll be like, it just reminds me of sitting in left field, chewing on a baseball glove, type thing. And people are like, you're crazy. How do you know what leather tastes like? And that's how I tell people that's how I know what leather tastes like. It's not like I'm chewing on belts as a 40-year-old man, but
our core rye reminds me of sitting on the back porch on a hot summer morning in Nashville with my mom and the honeysuckle blooming behind me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Literally that moment in time for me.
So let's dive a little bit into the Sur Lee. What do you get on this? What's your favorite thing about it? That type of thing.
Everything. So Sur Lee is a one of a kind whiskey, and it actually is a one of a kind whiskey. So no one's ever done this before. Our company the company that owns Redemption also is big into the wine world. My boss is is the head winemaker for a brand called Josh, amongst others. And the idea came to bring old world techniques from the wine world into the whiskey world. One of those techniques is called Sur Lee. And Sur Lee is when you, especially on things like Chardonnay, is when you age it in a barrel with the yeast still in there.
Ooh.
And the yeast dies and becomes the lees, and it autolyzes and self-eats itself and just destroys, and it goes into it and adds these creamy notes and all this. And so the idea was like, well, what could we bring that to the whiskey world? It's never been done before. How would we do it? So we take the back set, like after distillation, we take out, we spin it to take out the solids. We add that into the barrel before we add the unaged rye whiskey 95.5 on top of it. That ages for 3 years because 3 years is the perfect point where the two notes balance. We have to roll them every 6 months to keep it going. And something unique happened that had never been seen in whiskey. And this is a whiskey that Dave Pickerel would have been really mad because he didn't think of. It's got umami, it's got marshmallow, and it's creamy, and it's got this hint of coconut in the background, but you still get the rye spice somehow, and you get heavy caramel, and you get these fruit notes at the end. But the umami on it is the ultimate balancing whiskey. This is Thanksgiving dinner. This is your big steak and roasted. If you're a vegetarian, your big thing of roasted mushrooms. This is that. This is that, right? This is what You don't need a big red wine with dinner, with a big steak dinner. You need this. This is the perfect whiskey for it.
Yeah.
And those notes weren't there before. We did a VIP dinner with a whole bunch of other master distillers, and there's 5 of us, and the host of it picked which course the whiskeys were going to go with. And I show up with a 3-year-old rye, and there's like 14-year-old barrel strength bourbons there, and
Yeah.
all this amazing stuff. And I got the entree, and none of the other master distillers and blenders they're like, why? I don't understand. Because everybody wants the entree, of course. And then they all tasted it and went, okay, I get it. It's so weird and so unique and so amazing.
It reminds me, because I'm not going to use the word hearken.
Whatever.
You want to?
Reminds me
Do it.
It reminds me of like Sicers. I don't know if you've ever made Sicers or not. Like it's basically mead, but then you add fresh fruit to it while you're letting it ferment.
Oh, okay.
So a Sizer.
No, I haven't.
So that's what it kind of reminds me of, is like that Sizer. But dude, the nose on this thing is amazing. I don't have a big enough glass to get my nose in there far enough to keep smelling this thing, dude.
And it's funny because when I talk to all of our partners and I training even our staff, I always tell people to taste people on it first and tell the story second, because it's such a weird in-depth story that you can kind of get Charlie Brown's teacher with it, right? But if you just taste it, it is magical. This is also, I've had a lot of people converting back to rye whiskey because of this.
I can see why.
It launched for the first time September 2 years ago. It wasn't able to fully go into market for some things you can Google between us and a company that rhymes with mullet. But it is relaunching now. We've got our second batch relaunching. It should be hitting stores October, September throughout the country. It's slightly, it's a smaller amount this year, and it'll be growing every year after. So it is amazing.
I haven't even had a chance to taste it yet.
Oh,
I'm
God.
still just sniffing it.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah,
I
me
can't
neither.
either.
And look how much he simped me on this pour, man.
Like seriously,
it's just really
Now,
embarrassing.
I have
come
been.
on, Scott.
I have tasted it already, and holy macaroni!
Now, with all fairness, they only sent us a.
That's because it doesn't exist yet in the bottle. So
Fair enough.
yes,
Fair
that is you're one of the very few people that actually, I don't know any other podcast that has had this. So
I don't say this lightly. It is. This is a treat.
Yeah.
This is in a caliber all its own.
Like-
And even when you were describing like the Thanksgiving dinner,
Yeah.
like, all of those layers are coming
Yeah.
through, and it is.
You've got that appetizer, you've got the main entree, you've got the dessert, you've got the snacks afterwards, you've got it all.
but at the same time, it for me, it is accessible enough to be an
Yeah.
everyday pour.
Absolutely.
It is so amazing for that. And old fashions, like all that kind of stuff.
Oh, things I
We
could do
made,
with this.
We made BLTs with it, or I guess RLTs, bourbon, rye, lemon, and tonic with it.
All right.
And it was just fantastic.
So I find it crazy that with this nose, right? Like it's amazingly fruity, it's complex on like creaminess and all that stuff. But when you drink it, like it's Barbara's right in some capacity. Like it just takes you everywhere. Like there's baking spice, there's chewiness, there's like textures that like are just crazy unusual for your typical rye whiskey. And I guess it's because of that fact that it's been basically second like distilled or brewed or whatever in that barrel. Is that what's causing that like weird and it's weird in a good way, but
It's that connection. It's that connection with that it is being created by that those yeast cells and all that stuff that is in there. It's something that it has never really been done before. So there's no way to know. There was no way to know that this could happen beforehand.
One thing that I wanted to say was that as I was going into is a couple things. One, I've got in our family, I randomly bought a thing of dried mangoes or the dehydrated mangoes and recently. And so we've actually been purchasing a load of those from Sam. So actually it had been gone for a while and my wife went there and found it. She ended up buying like 4 bags of it. But just some of the nosing from that reminded me of that. The other thing that kind of quite amazes me is such a light color delivering so much complexity.
Agreed.
Is
Totally.
really interesting.
Something else that's interesting is if you add ice to this, it will cloud to the point where we put it on the bottle.
Oh, wow.
Because of all the added proteins and all that is from the undistilled product. If I had filtered it to a point where all of that was when it would go clear, not that I am not a person that really cares about that, but if I had filtered it to that point, all these flavors would have gone away. So we actually just our answer to that was just write it on the bottle.
Absolutely. Transparency.
Yeah.
I want more.
No, this is one I'm going to hunt for when it
Absolutely.
gets released. It is incredible, man.
It shouldn't have to, like, we make enough where it shouldn't be a heavy hunt.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I don't, for those that live in Kentucky and have seen the U-Hauls pull up to the liquor stores and taking all the fun stuff away, I don't want that to happen.
Right.
All right, so here's the hard question. If you're not drinking Redemption, what are you drinking?
No, I mean, there's two easy answers. If I'm not drinking Redemption or if I'm not drinking whiskey.
So you can do both questions. So if you're drinking bourbon and whiskey, and it's not Redemption, what is it? And then and you've already said you're having cognac, but you can elaborate on that if you want.
No, actually, it wouldn't be cognac.
Oh.
It would be Bib and Tucker if it's staying in the whiskey world.
Okay.
I'm a Tennessee boy, and the double char from Bib and Tucker is one of my favorite Tennessee whiskeys that's ever been made. If it is not a whiskey, it's tequila.
Okay.
To kill you.
I love agaves.
Are you the clear spirit or do you like it aged?
I like all of them, but generally I will go to the clears.
Okay.
I love a Blanco. Cantera Negra makes an amazing Blanco that's just beautiful. And I'm not just loving that because I send my bourbon barrels to them for aging. But it's because the clear one doesn't hit that. But I love, on a hot day, a good tequila is worth it.
All right, let me flip that a little bit. How about a winter day, like during winter months? Because I know sometimes up in Tennessee it does still get cold.
Yeah, and I'm in Kentucky now, so now it gets even colder. Like 4 times a year, it gets real cold. As weird as it is, on like really cold days, I love gin.
Okay.
Yes.
Gin. Huh.
Interesting.
We have our Gray Whale gin, which is one of our partners, and it's got they use kelp in it.
Okay.
And it is just phenomenal. Like that nice G&T. Like my wife does it with elderflower tonic sometimes. It's just it kind of just brightens your day up when it's really cold.
I want to drink with Alan, but I don't want to eat cheese with him because he likes blue cheese. That's what I decided.
I just know it pairs well with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
If you want a fun one to drink, though, take our Redemption High Rye Bourbon, get a big glass bottle Coke, drink some of it down, fill it back most of the way up with bourbon in the bottle, and then put salted peanuts in the bottle.
Ooh.
The old take. My granddad used to do this at ball games. There's a bartender, Ben Clemens in Nashville, Tennessee, who put this on his menu. He called it a pawpaw, and like I swear to you, I would just every single time just go for this because it's a snack and a really good drink, and the salt and the Coke and the bourbon together is just stunning.
I've done the Coke and peanuts probably 100 times in my life. Like that was something my great grandpa used to do.
Yep.
But I've never done it with bourbon. That's just a fantastic idea.
Yep. And it hides it. You're just I'm just drinking.
My mind is blown.
When we do a podcast where we feature that, we'll give you a shout out.
Absolutely.
As I said, it's not my invention, but like I do love them. So
hey, sometimes it's more about what you love. So one thing that I do want to know, just because I am the rye gal and I do love my ryes totally, when you are thinking about a fantastic rye, what are 2 or 3 main things that you look for in smell and taste?
We already did that one, Barbara.
I want him to elaborate.
I'm going if I'm evaluating barrels, I need that spice up front. I want it to have. I really like a caramel midpoint. Like I want caramel in there, which only comes from like really good aging on it.
Okay.
And as I said, I want that honeysuckle kind of purple flower at the end. Those are the 3 main things.
Okay.
I will, in a larger batch, because with our core rye, we're doing pretty large batches. I will add in some that are really heavily oaked. I will add some in that are, more spiced. I will add some that are a little weaker because I want the overall. That's what we're creating.
Right.
But if I'm just evaluating just for that or like for a single barrel, that's what I'm looking for.
I apologize for hands moving around and everything
It
else.
doesn't bother me.
The peanut gallery is growing rapidly now. Everybody's finally making it through the traffic. So,
one question I got for you is, what are some of the hands-on tasks you do at Redemption to hold what the product you create at a high standard versus maybe some of your competitors?
I mean, Again, I'm not gonna, I don't know, and I'm not gonna speak to what competitors do. Because each, all of us have our own way and our own game. One way is not necessarily better than the other.
No, never is.
Yeah, out of respect on it. On ours, we do a lot of work with our partners, both from the distillation and from the physical bottling side, through every part of this process. There's three of us, and we go through every batch, every mix. We're looking at the distillations. We're looking at lab tests. Every finished batch goes through a full lab evaluation just to make sure that everything's good. We also do time tests to make sure everything in the bottle is good. There's a lot of background stuff that's not pretty and not fun, but it's to make sure that it's holding up the way it should. I have an amazing team to back me on that too.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes it takes a village to get a lot of things done.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see Scott trying to suck the last drop out of the Sur Lee bottle.
That is a lie. I did not tip that bottle up to see if there was anything left in it.
We have video evidence.
Lies.
Our listeners know you well.
Yep.
All right.
What are you a cocktail guy? And if so, what are some of your favorite cocktails that you may use redemption products in?
Oh, I'm definitely a cocktail guy. I've run many cocktail programs, and it's funny because those of us that have worked in that part of the industry for a long time, generally our after-work shift drink was just a beer and a shot. So that will always stand.
Yeah.
Hot summer days, as I mentioned earlier, BLTs are always a favorite. I really like bourbon brambles.
Okay, what are
especially
those?
in the summertime. So a bramble is lemon, and it's basically like the equivalent to like a margarita almost. The original one was gin, and it was gin, lemon, and blackberry liqueur. I like to do, and a little simple syrup to sweeten it up. I like lemon, simple syrup, muddled blackberries, state fruit of Kentucky. They grow great here. And a little bit of bourbon. It is basically, and you can make that frozen too. It is the perfect like bourbon equivalent to a margarita. It's amazing.
That's weird. I do something similar with that, only I will add just a splash of like ginger ale or like Sprite or something like that just to give it a little bit of a
little bubble to it.
Little bubble, yeah.
Unlike 98% of the people that drink them during Derby, I actually do like a mint julep every now and then.
Okay.
Most people just buy them and don't drink them. And then, if we're growing cocktails, old fashions are always going to have a good place in my heart. It's just the go-to if done right.
Okay. So
and right doesn't mean fancy.
Okay. So in terms of an old fashioned, you're saying if it's done right. Now, do you prefer more of the bitter or more of a sweeter or a very perfect mix?
I'm either wanting, probably quarter of an ounce of simple syrup, rich syrup, 3 dashes of Angostura. I'm a purist on the Angosturas. I do love a lot of the others. And then just like an orange twist, I either want that simplistic, that's the true old school style.
Okay.
Or I want like the muddled orange and soda. Like I don't like the nuclear cherries because they're not supposed to eat those things. It says it on the bottle. But I do like the big muddled ones sometimes too, where they're like sweet and fun. Like there's a time and place for all of them.
This is an oddball Johnny Tsunami question.
Imagine that.
Say shut the hell up, Barbara. Everyone knows I throw these off my top of my head.
Always.
Well, I mean, Alan's a cool guy, so I think he'll appreciate this question. So, SHTF scenario, World War Z, zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. What is the pinnacle drink for you? If you know there's no going back, and you open up the cabinet and you're pulling this sucker off the shelf, what would it be?
Stockpiling.
Oh, which one am I stockpiling?
No, which one are you drinking? Like you're sitting there, you've got a bite on your arm, right? This is
kind of like that.
This is the exit show, man.
Death row thing.
I want to know
because
if you could have your last drink, what would it be? Because I'm really fascinated to know like the people in the industry who know so much more than I do. Like what would be it? Like to go out on that high note, what would it be? I told you it was going to be wild.
I think it would be my cognac.
Okay.
I want that smell, that just last moment of just peace and just quiet and just melting in and just being done with it. It's probably going to be that one.
I love
Nice.
that answer, man.
One thing that we typically do on our podcast is we will go back and kind of sniff like the empty Glens after they've kind of dried a little bit. And I went back to that Sur Lee, and oh my Lord, it's got that tobacco leftover smell in it, but it has this fruit note kind of sweet fruit note cutting through that tobacco, and it is so enjoyable.
Thank you.
I can see where Nick's coming from.
Amazing whiskey.
Scott doesn't get it.
I'm still troubled at the fact that Barbara couldn't sniff her own glass. She had to ask sniff mine because hers wasn't empty yet. Because I literally plowed through that like knows what.
I'm savoring it
I wish I could have savored it.
with so little.
So I want to be respectful of your time. I told Lily and them I wouldn't take more than about an hour, and we're running right on that right now. So
No worries.
for folks that want to find Redemption, want to find your products, where are they located? If people want to come visit you, can they do that? And if so, how do they do that?
We have a lot of homes, but we don't have one that you can visit. We have homes, we partners at MGP and Castle and Key and many others. We don't have a place you can come visit us. Visit our friends, please. They have some amazing distilleries. Buying us, though, we are available all through the United States and multiple countries outside. We have great partners in Total Wine. We have great partners in Benny's if you're up in the Midwest. Basically, all major retailers will carry it.
And just as a recap, when should we expect Sur Lee again? Because I think that's about on everybody's notes now.
August should be landing in store August, September. Obviously, that will vary a little bit, part of the country, travel time, all that. So
End of August. Okay.
yeah, if you're in the Jersey area, probably the very beginning of August because that's where the warehouse is.
Oh, okay.
Note to the listening people in the background, a bottle of Sur Lee would be great, so we can really dive into it really hard.
Absolutely. My birthday's in October, so send it on.
Right? See, birthday presents, great. I know it's rye, but Bourbon Heritage Month will make a great gift
Yeah.
just to piss somebody off. Rye Heritage Month is November, though. So
Every month is Bourbon and Rye Heritage Month in my
Exactly.
world. People, I just tell people they're quitters when they stop for dry January. I'm like, y'all are just, your livers are weak, and
Yeah.
I don't like it. So Alan, we greatly appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your life with us a little bit today, and obviously the whiskey that you've curated for us today. So
thank you for having me. Thank you for enjoying them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Supposed to be.
Absolutely. So I'm going to sign us off here. If you want to find Bourbon Barrel Talk, you can find us on Facebook, the Instagram, or the X. Make sure you also hit the subscribe button, whether you're getting us on, which is my favorite one, Spotify, or whether it's iTunes or whatever else. You can get those episodes as soon as they drop on Sundays. This is Scott, Nick, Alan Kennedy, and the crew signing off. Peace.